Awakened Artist Podcast with John White.
Hello everyone, I am the Awakened Artist, John White, and this is the Awakened Artist Podcast. Welcome to part 2 of my spirituality series. In the last episode, I discussed what spirituality is to me, that through spirituality comes self-worth, how we learn about ourselves, forming a true identity, the part of us that is the soul becomes present in the human experience. And we understand our connection to the universe more when we understand who we are individually and the importance of being that individual, how it contributes to the one, the collective, the universe. Living a spiritual life is truly living life through your soul as your true self, higher self, whatever you'd like to call it. In this episode, I want to discuss a process that I basically came up with. Actually, when I went back and was writing this episode, I realized that I had created a process throughout the past 7 years of my spiritual awakening, my journey, whatever you want to call it. And this process is basically a way to start to live a spiritual life. And I would bet that a lot of people out there are already doing most of these things, at least the people that are listening to this podcast, or are interested in doing most of these things already. And I'm basically just going to put them all together to kind of make sense of it, hopefully. So before we can find our place in the world, we must understand ourself. Self being the key word. To do this, I've created 4 steps or phases, and they are self-discovery, self-healing and growth, it's kind of combined, self-expression, and self-love. Now, like I said, this is a process that has worked for me. It's a process that can be done anytime you're ready for a fresh start. You'll also find that the phases can actually happen simultaneously. So you'll kind of understand what that means as I go on and explain each one of these phases or steps, stages, whatever you like to call them. Having said that, let's jump right into the process. And step 1 of the process, which is self-discovery. This is probably the most important. It's the foundation of the entire process. Without understanding who we are, we won't know our place in the world. So the first thing we need to really look at is, what are our strengths and weaknesses? What are the things that we're really good at? Where do we thrive? And also, the opposite side of that, what are the areas where we've lacked, or areas that just could use some overall improvement? You'll find when you start to really dive into this that, in all honesty, we have more strengths than we do weaknesses. It's really just about recognizing what they are. And if you are a person who thinks that that is not true of yourself, it's probably just because you're beating yourself up too much, in all honesty. If you really sat, you can find way more strengths than weaknesses. So through this process, it is very difficult when you start to expose things about yourself that maybe you're not comfortable with, or things you've ignored. But it's very important to bring all of the bad stuff forward too, because it's not really bad. It's just a part of you and the experiences that you've had in your life. And we just need to pay attention to those things. And I'll explain, going forward what to do with all that. But the other thing is we need to figure out what makes us happy. Our interests, things that we do that make us happy. And then also the things that cause us pain. If you can hear right now, there's a football game going on at the end of my street. If you hear what sounds like gunshots in the background, it's just a football game and the fireworks. I assure you I am not in a war zone. Now, this is also where we start to form our beliefs, our ideas on creation and death, the afterlife, all of that. This is where this all begins to kind of come up. If it's not already there for you, I mean, and maybe you already know what you believe in and you're set, and that's absolutely fine. This can be a time to kind of revisit that if you're open-minded. But I wanted to share some ways to help you through the process as well, things to pay attention to that can help you discover these different parts of yourself. It is, again, it's very difficult, especially when you're asking people on the outside, people like your partner or friends and family. That can be pretty difficult, having someone critique you. So maybe it's easier just to kind of do some of the things that I did, like dream work, really paying attention to my dreams and the messages that come through that. Therapy is another one. It was really big for me, helping me with a neutral perspective from my therapist. Astrology is a good one too. If you're into astrology, it can give you, if you get like a natal chart reading or you understand that, it gives you a good basis or a place to start understanding your strengths and weaknesses. I look at astrology in the context of energies that are here to assist us. For example, if you are someone who is born under a fire sign, you may have a little more assertiveness in the way you do things. And, let's say if you are an Aries, the first zodiac sign, you have access to energies that help you get things started. You're really good at starting things. And that's just an example. There's so many. The more work you do in that, you can really discover a lot about yourself. If you're into that kind of thing, I know it helped me out tremendously. But one of the biggest things that you can do is meditation. It's probably the most important, is really being by yourself. And this is extremely difficult as well. Sitting by yourself and trying to go within, just be mindful of the situation, the feelings in your body, paying attention to your breath, and letting thoughts as they pop in your mind just as easily release, and trying to find a balance of just existing and feeling what it feels like to be you. It's very difficult, especially when we have limited time. I get it. I struggle with meditation. That's another reason why I like to paint and be creative. It's a way for me to kind of shut down that left brain and go into creative mode. But, one of the things I forgot to mention was discovering our healthy and unhealthy patterns are also a really big part of this discovery process. Physically, mentally, and emotionally, we are what we consume. And I cannot stress that more. I have realized that the food that I eat absolutely plays a role on how my body feels. I have eliminated things from my diet for a couple weeks at a time to see how my body feels, and then reintroduce those things and seen major differences. We're all different and our bodies are different. Mentally, the things that you are, TV that you're watching, the shows that you're watching, the movies that you watch, social media, all of these things are, what you're looking at on your phone constantly. All of the information, if you're just constantly watching the news or a bunch of angry people, you're just vibing with that same vibe. Get away from it. It's also affecting your emotions at the same time. So just watch what you consume. The second part of the process is, it's kind of two things combined together here. It's self-healing and growth. I did have these as separate stages of the process. Then I realized they kind of go hand in hand, because as you're healing, you're also growing. Now, through the first stage, I don't know what I'm calling these. I think I've said stage, phase, and step. So I'm all over the place, but it's not relevant, nor is it important. Through the first stage, discovery, we recognize our traumas, more or less, how we've been mentally and emotionally injured through our life experiences, whether they be minor or major. There's still things that have happened to us and need to be recognized. Recognizing them or becoming self-aware, it's really the first step in healing. And it's also a way for us to better understand some of our shadow side, the darker sides of us, some suppressed feelings and emotions that have kind of been pushed into the subconscious. And we have to be careful not to become victims or martyrs of circumstances that happen to us. It's really just seeing those things for what they are and learning to accept that they're part of us. And they always will be. That the more we recognize them, the more we are comfortable with ourselves and accepting of the situations that we have experienced. It becomes easier to forgive people. The more we discover about ourselves, we see that, we've obviously hurt other people as well at some point in time. So when you're looking at someone that has hurt you, you kind of got to balance it out and say, I can understand where that person came from because I was in that place as well. So that's where the forgiveness begins. And the forgiveness is extremely important to the healing process as well. The growth starts to happen when we start to take action and actually change. Through understanding our strengths and weaknesses, we can start to reshape unhealthy patterns and deconstruct old thought patterns. We can really begin to formulate a plan, what we want to do, what we don't want to do, what we want in our life and what we don't want in our life. This is where we can begin to set goals, long-term goals, short-term goals, whatever, just giving us something to aim towards so that we can have a sense of accomplishment through these stages, recognizing the hard work we've put in. And remember that through this process, it's really about you. So if you're looking to the outside for recognition, it's about recognizing what you've done. And that's what all that matters. I have mistakenly a lot of times through this process have looked to other people to tell me that I've done a great job through all of the hard work I've gone through. But in all reality, it's nice to hear that. And absolutely, it's great to be supported when you're doing tough work. But really what matters is deep down inside that you appreciate the hard work that you've done, because that leads into my fourth step that we'll get into in a minute. But the third step, it's really the fun part, because all of this discovery, you're learning to kind of accept these parts of who you are, and then you have this healing process that's going to continue to go on throughout the entire journey that you're on, or even for the rest of your life. It's always constantly a healing going on of something of some sort and some kind of growth from that healing. And again, you can revisit this process and there'll be self-discovery. You'll be rediscovering who you are at different times of your life because things have changed and you've outgrown old ways. So this process can start all over again. But yeah, the third part is, it's the self-expression part. It is the funnest. The confidence really starts to come through here now. You get to see, like I said, all of these things that you've discovered, you've healed, you've grown, and now you start to have the confidence from that hard work through understanding all of their parts, our own unique traits that's contributing to the world. And because of the confidence, we start to have more expression through our style or fashion. And because of that confidence, we also become more creative through art, music, writing, etc., willing to try out things, which leads to vulnerability. And that feeds right back into the confidence. So creativity, it gives us so much. And the Awakened Artist, the name, my entire process has been so much about the creativity, but it is one of my strengths. So it may be a little bit different for you, but it is a great way to be mindful and kind of get in that meditative state like I mentioned before. What you get from creativity, no matter what it is, I didn't even think, I could have never imagined I was going to become a painter. Never would I have ever thought, until it just kind of forcefully happened in a situation where I was around a group of friends and we had this circle going, and it was everybody's got to paint and just react and make some kind of crazy painting. And I really painted some cool shit. And from there, I was like, wow, I can kind of do this. And I love the idea of mixing colors together and color contrast and all of these different things that I also realized that it put me in a state of mind that typically I'm locked into the left brain a lot of times in life. That's not a good balance for me. I'm definitely much more of a creative person, and somewhere down the line, I became a lot more of a logical left brain survivor. I think it's just from my survival instincts, not from my survival instincts, but just from my background of living in a survival mode. And now that I'm not really necessarily in survival mode, I can kind of lean more into that right brain, the creative side of me. And, again, back to what the creativity gives you, it gives you accomplishments, whether it be a song that you wrote, a poem that you wrote, a story, a painting that you painted, a drawing that you drew, any of those things, you get a sense of accomplishment that I fucking did that. I did it. Especially if it's coming from a place that you don't know where it's coming from and you're just creating. It's kind of just channeling through you. That's what happens when I do what I do when I paint. I mean, that, and then you get to become a creator. It's one of the reasons I love to grow plants. I love starting from seed, and I am the nurturer and the creator of this plant in a sense. Don't get me wrong, the sun, light, water, the nutrients in the soil, all these things are big factors that come into that, but I am the one that is caring for that plant from the beginning to the end. And it's the same whenever you create something. You get a sense of being a creator, and that feels great. I mean, it feels amazing. It's a little things that you get to add to your day that make you feel more than just some complacent person who's sitting around staring at a phone. And when we're being creators, we're kind of showing the world our own uniqueness expressed through our creativity. And I think that's super powerful. If everybody was tapping into that, we would just have a bunch of cool creative ideas out there to choose from, different paths to kind of look at life from different perspectives. But yeah, I don't know, dream scenarios. In my situation, my expression, my self-expression has basically been a mirror of my interests, my passions, and how my mind works. For example, if you look at my Instagram page, it's all over the place because I'm all over the place and I'm just being me in the moment. No business agenda or need for attention. I'm just trying to connect with like-minded people. I honestly, genuinely am. Maybe build a cool community within, show everyone that it's okay to be different, unique, and weird. It all equals happiness in the end. That's one of the main reasons I'm doing this podcast and why I have an Instagram page or I have a blog. It's to show people where I was and where I am. And I'm not super rich. I'm just happy. I don't know why I said super rich right off the get, but I think it's just because I think of a lot of people when they think of happiness, they think of needing to have a lot of money. But I mean, my kids are healthy and I still have quite a bit of family left that I get to be around still. I have a business that I've built. I have all these little creations throughout my house that get to remind me that, like I said, I am a creator. I am an artist. I have the ability to create something amazing at any moment. Some of these pieces that I have around my house they're terrible. I mean, in all honesty, they're just absolute shit, and I don't even want to show anybody them. And then there's a couple of them that I'm super proud of. And I think one day I'll create something that's truly amazing, that's universal, that everybody looks at as, holy shit, that's amazing. Maybe it's this podcast. I don't know. But I'm just willing to try and just kind of go with my intuition and the flow of what I'm feeling in the moment. And that leads me to the last step, phase. The obvious one, self-love, the end result. This is where discovery, healing, growth, expression are all wrapped into one, a big, unique you. This can absolutely be the hardest stage to get to. And I honestly think you can get to it, but you have to keep on trying to get to it sometimes for some people. For me personally, I struggled a lot with this one, and I still struggle with it. I am constantly having to go back. And I think these little moments of me creating and painting something, I get an appreciation for myself when I do create something great. And I have to remind myself when I do create something I absolutely hate at the same time, I am getting something out of it. I'm not just wasting paint. I'm tapping into a part of me it's actually balancing something out inside of my head. It's giving me something that I need. And a lot of times when I get out of whack, I start to get easily frustrated. It's typically because I need a little more creativity in my life, which is, one of my strengths that I have. So maybe for you, if you're getting a little out of balance, there's a strength or something that you need to touch on a little bit more in your life. That's so important. Balance is the key to all of this, really. It's just finding that balance. Don't get too frustrated, when you get to the point and you're like, man, I don't know that I truly do love myself. It really is a process in itself to get to that point, to really step back and you see the shadow side of you and you look at the good parts, what we would call the bad parts, and you look at it as a collective and you realize you're just a fucking person like everybody else. We all have these good parts and we all have bad parts. And the people that learn to balance that out and accept the bad parts, they're the ones that become happy because they're just happy with who they are deep inside. And that's where the self-love comes from. That's the difficult part to get to that point. But I promise you, if I can do it, and I still have a ways to go, if I can do it, anybody can do it, because the person that I used to be, if you knew me when I wasn't drunk, I was not a very happy person by any means. I had a lot of anger and frustration and hatred inside of me. And it's taken quite a bit of work to reprogram that mind, that pessimistic, angry mind that always wanted to point fingers and be a victim. That person has slowly drifted away. It's still there. It's within me. There's no doubt about it. I don't act like I've completely conquered that side of me and it's gone. It will always be a part of me. But now that I recognize it, I can see if it ever starts to want to come back. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like that. That's happening again? Nope, no thanks. So self-love can be tough, but it's something that can be accomplished. I promise. And I think here I'll end the podcast. I did want to mention last time, I talked a little bit about people being turned off by spirituality, and I wanted to just kind of touch on that real quick. There's another part of that because there's so much bullshit to sift through. Instagram has a lot of people that are getting hacked, their accounts getting hacked and asking for readings, and it's just giving the whole mediumship and people that do tarot or anything like that really a bad name. And the spiritual community in general lacks authenticity. I think a lot of people think it's a trendy thing to be spiritual, and don't take this the wrong way, or don't take it personal. A lot of people, or some people I have met, they wear a couple fucking crystals and they know about energy, all of a sudden they're fucking spiritual. Spiritual is about diving into who you are. The good and the bad, doing the work. It really is about doing the work. And then all these gifts start to come to you. And we'll get into all of that later. I just want to touch on that again real fast. I also, if you would be interested in a mentorship program, I've thought about writing some kind of mentorship workshop or something, maybe a program, and helping people. It's something that I really would love to do. And I would love to, more than anything, do it as a career. Instead of tinting windows, helping people would be the best. It would fulfill a part of me that's not filled right now, that's for sure. So if you would be interested in something like that, let me know. Please let me know. Just DM me on Instagram, or you can email awakenhartist@gmail.com and let me know. I would be very interested in thinking about that if I had enough people that were interested. Maybe putting together a program to helping those people just based on my experiences, more or less. And in this format or this process that I just laid out would pretty much be the basis. So please let me know, and thank you for listening to the Awaken Artist podcast. If you'd like to learn more about me and my experiences, follow @AwakenArtist on Instagram or visit the website awakenartist.com.